In a city so filled with icons of antiquity and the Christian faith, it's hard to know where to go first. Of course, your own interests will govern your choices, but there are certain sites that are almost obligatory landmarks of Italy and of all Europe, such as the Coliseum and the Pantheon. A word of caution: try to vary your experiences as you explore Rome, so that you don't visit too many ancient sites or churches in a row. And intersperse these more serious attractions with a few that are simply tourist icons, the Spanish Steps and that place all tourists must go to toss in their coin, the Trevi Fountain. Let's go to the video. Number 1. The Coliseum and the Arch of Constantine. As the Eiffel Tower is to Paris, the silhouette of the Flavian Amphitheater is to Rome. The largest structure left to us by Roman antiquity, the Colosseum still provides the model for sports arenas. Present-day football stadium design is clearly based on this oval Roman plan. The building was begun by Vespasian in AD 72, and after his son Titus enlarged it by adding the fourth story, it was inaugurated in the year AD 80 with a series of splendid games. The Colosseum was large enough for theatrical performances, festivals, circuses, or games, which the imperial court and high officials watched from the lowest level, aristocratic Roman families on the second, the populace on the third and fourth. Beside the Colosseum stands the almost equally familiar Arch of Constantine, a triumphal arch erected by the Senate to honor the emperor as liberator of the city and bringer of peace after his victory in the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312. Lines are long and move slowly, so you can save time by joining the Skip the Line, Ancient Rome and Colosseum half-day walking tour, and have a knowledgeable guide, as well. Number 2. Vatican City. The Vatican is the smallest independent state in the world, with an area of less than half a square kilometer, most of it enclosed by the Vatican walls. Inside are the Vatican Palace and Gardens, St. Peter's Basilica, and St. Peter's Square, an area ruled by the Pope, supreme head of the Roman Catholic Church. This compact space offers a lot of things to see, between its museums and the Great Basilica itself. Inside St. Peter's Basilica is Michelangelo's masterpiece, Pieta, along with statuary and altars by Bernini and others. The unquestioned highlight of the Vatican museums is the Sistine Chapel, whose magnificent frescoed ceiling is Michelangelo's most famous work. In the Vatican Palace are the Raphael Rooms, the Borgia Apartments, the Vatican Library, and a number of museums that include the Picture Gallery, Museum of Secular Art, Etruscan Museum, and others. The collections you can see in these cover everything from papal coaches to 20th century art reflecting religious themes. Number 3. The Pantheon. The Pantheon, the best preserved monument of Roman antiquity, is remarkably intact for its 2,000 years. This is despite the fact that Pope Gregory III removed the gilded bronze roof tiles, and Pope Urban VIII ordered its bronze roof stripped and melted down to cast the canopy over the altar in St. Peter's and canons for Castel SantAngelo. The Pantheon was rebuilt after damage by fire in AD 80, and the resulting brickwork shows the extraordinarily high technical mastery of Roman builders. Its 43-meter dome, the supreme achievement of Roman interior architecture, hangs suspended without visible supports. These are well hidden inside the walls, and its 9-meter central opening is the building's only light source. The harmonious effect of the interior is a result of its proportions. The height is the same as the diameter. Although the first Christian emperors forbade using this pagan temple for worship, in 609 Pope Boniface IV dedicated it to the Virgin and all the Christian martyrs, and since then, it has become the burial place of Italian kings. Victor Emmanuel II is in the second niche on the right, and other famous Italians, including the painter Raphael. Number 4. Roman Forum. Walking through the Forum, now in the middle of a throbbing modern city, is like stepping back 2 millennia into the heart of ancient Rome. Although what survives of this center of Roman life and government shows only a small fraction of its original splendor, the standing and fallen columns, its triumphal arches, and remains of its walls still impress, especially when you consider that for centuries, the history of the Forum was the history of the Roman Empire and of the Western world. Roman political and religious life was centered here, along with the courts, markets, and meeting places. After the 7th century, the buildings fell into ruin, and churches and fortresses were built amid the ancient remains. Its stones were quarried for other buildings, and it was not until the 18th and 19th centuries that systematic excavations brought the ancient buildings to light from under a 10-meter layer of earth and rubble. Number 5. Trevi Fountain. Rome's largest fountain, Fontana di Trevi, is supplied by an aqueduct originally constructed by Agrippa, the great art patron of the 1st century BC, to bring water to his baths. The fountain was created for Pope Clement XII between 1732 and 1751 by Niccolò Salvi, and built against the rear wall of the Palace of the Dukes of Pali. It depicts the sea god Oceanus, Neptune, with horses, tritons, and shells. The water swirls around the figures and the artificial rocks, and collects in a large basin, always filled with coins. Number 6. Centro Storico and the Spanish Steps. Take a look at a Rome tourist map, and you'll see one area so filled with things to do that it's hard to read the street names. This is the Centro Storico, the historic center of Rome, with so many art-filled churches, resplendent palaces, and lively squares that you could spend your whole vacation strolling its ancient streets and lanes. Spend some time just to absorb the neighborhood's atmosphere instead of going from one of its must-see sites to the next. Along with Piazza Navona, the Trevi Fountain, and the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, stop in less well-known churches, such as Santa Maria del Popolo, where you'll find works by Bernini and Caravaggio. Pause at the Spanish Steps, the flight of irregular stairs and landings that lead up to the French Church of Trinita dei Monti. The stairs take their name from Piazza di Spagna, the plaza at their base and one of Rome's most typical squares. The stairs have been a favorite haunt of tourists, where they can sit and enjoy a gelato in the summer or warm their hands around cones of hot roasted chestnuts in the winter. Number 7. Santa Maria Maggiore. One of Rome's most majestic churches, Santa Maria Maggiore, has stood here since the 4th century Pope Liberius had a vision of the Virgin directing him to build a church where snow fell the following day. Although it was August, snow did fall on the Esquiline Hill the next morning, so here the great basilica was built. Mass has been celebrated here every day since the 5th century. The 3 aisles of its 86-meter-long interior are separated by 40 columns of marble and 4 of granite, and the apse added in the 13th century is lined with mosaics of Old and New Testament themes, masterpieces of Rome's famous mosaic artists. Number 8. Piazza Navona. One of Rome's most characteristic Baroque squares, Piazza Navona still has the outline of the Roman stadium built here by Emperor Domitian. It was still used for festivals and horse races during the Middle Ages, and was rebuilt in the Baroque style by Borromini, who also designed the magnificent series of palaces and the Church of SantAngelo on its west side. Its facade, campanile, and dome highlight the way Baroque architecture weaves convex and concave surfaces, gables, windows, columns, and piers into a unified design. In the crypt of SantAngelo are Alessandro Algardi's 1653 The Miracle of St. Agnes and the remains of a Roman mosaic floor. SantAngelo provided a model for Baroque and Rococo churches in Italy and elsewhere. Number 9. Palatine Hill. Strategically set 50 meters above the Tiber, the Palatine Hill shows evidence of Rome's earliest settlement. Rock cuttings found in front of the Temple of Cybele show human activity as long ago as the 9th century BC. Later, this was the site chosen by the emperors and great aristocratic families for their palaces. Highlights of the Palatine Hill are the House of Livia, Augustus' wife, the semi-subterranean Cryptoporticus, Domus Flavia, Domus Augustana, and most imposing of all, the Baths of Septimius Severus. The Palatine Hill is a lovely place to explore, combining a park with magnificent and impressive ruins of ancient Rome. Number 10. Villa Borghesa, Gallery and Gardens. One of Rome's largest parks, the Borghesa Gardens contain a number of attractions that include 2 museums, the most prominent of which is the Villa Borghesa. Built as a party villa and to house the Borghesa art collection, the gallery contains paintings, sculptures, mosaics, and reliefs, most from the 15th to the 18th century, and include works by Raphael, Titian, Caravaggio, and Rubens. Elsewhere in the park, Villa Giulia was built as a summer residence for the 16th century Pope Julius III and houses the Etruscan Museum. More villas are from the World Exposition that was held in Rome in 1911. The park is an English-style landscape garden, with walking paths and ponds where you can rent rowboats. You can also rent bikes or a surrey to explore the park. There is a good zoo, Bioparco di Roma, with naturalized enclosures and a miniature trail connecting its various sections. A number of its attractions will appeal to children, including playgrounds, weekend pony rides, and occasional puppet shows. Number 11. Castel SantAngelo National Museum. Begun in AD 135 as a mausoleum for the Emperor Hadrian and his family, Castel SantAngelo is a massive drum-shaped structure overlooking the Tiber near the Vatican. Over the millennia of its existence, Castel SantAngelo has been used as a papal residence and a fortress, and more recently as a national museum. Visitors reach the castle across a pedestrian bridge lined with statues of angels, by Bernini, and ascend to its 5 floors on a spiral ramp. At its various levels are prison cells, a large collection of weapons, and splendidly decorated papal apartments covered in Renaissance frescoes. At the top is a terrace with stunning views of the city. Number 12. Baths of Caracala. Completed by Caracala in 216, these were much more than public baths. They were a complete sports center, with hot and cold baths, a swimming pool, dry and steam saunas, gymnastics and sports facilities, social rooms, gardens, libraries, hairdressers, and shops. The massive and imposing structure covered an area of 300 square meters, a complex of gigantic halls whose domes and vaulting were supported by huge columns and piers. It could accommodate 1,500 people at a time. The floors and walls were covered with marbles, mosaics, and frescoes. Even in ruin their splendor is still evident.